on a sole source contract to photocopy past questions for West African Senior School Certificate Examinations candidate. That's a WASI candidates in 2020 and 2021. Some 68.5 million cedis was given on a sole source contract basis to photocopy past questions. We'll give you details of that shortly here on Hot Edition. Opposition NDC calls out Electoral Commission for lack of consultation over the 2024 election calendar. We have details for you, and also the details of the calendar that the NDC has raised questions about here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We also have some news coming through now that transport fares set to increase by 30% effective March 7. This is some 3 days away from today. Transport fares are expected to go up by 30%. We have details for you. We'll get through to the GPR to you shortly here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. I am Alfred Ocansey. Welcome. Let's get into the details shortly. Let's get into the details now here on Hot Edition, as minority MPs are questioning the basis for the Ministry of Finance's release on the anti-LGBTQ plus bill passed by Parliament last week. The ministry has asked President Akufo-Addo to defer assenting to the bill, as it may cost the country over $3 billion deal with the Bretton Woods institutions. The controversial bill has also seen development partners issue warnings of possible setbacks to the Ghanaian economy. Now, these concerns are being corroborated by the Finance Ministry, which fears that the nation, as Ghana, is not ready for the financial cuts the country could be plunged into if President Akufo-Addo assents to this bill into law. Now, let's walk you through the details of what possible implications have been highlighted and the solutions thereof when it comes to this bill becoming law. Now, we'll look at the World Bank funded programs. One, some $300 million first Ghana Resilient Recovery Development Policy Operation. That's the budget support, and a few others as well. And they're quite a lot, to be honest. And we're talking about some $3.8 billion that the Finance Ministry fears that Ghana would lose if this anti-LGBTQ plus bill becomes law after President Akufo-Addo, if so, accents to it. Now, my colleague Dennis Boberi-Wadam has been running through the various possible financial implications of this bill if it's so accented to. Then it's beyond the $300 million First Ghana Resilient Recovery Development Policy Operation. That's the budgetary support that the Finance Ministry fears will lose. Which others are we talking about?
Well, there are quite a number of them, and that is just one of the many things that the Ministry of Finance fears that the passage and the subsequent assent, if it should happen by the president, will cost Ghana. So the other one has to do with the ongoing negotiations on the second Ghana Resilient Recovery Development Policy Operation, which is a budget support amounting to some $300 million. They fear that this may be suspended. Also, under the impact on the World Bank funded programs, you have a disbursement of an undisbursed amount totaling $2.1 billion for ongoing projects, which they fear will be suspended. Also, there's a preparation of pipeline projects and declaration of effectiveness for 2 projects totaling worth $900 million. They fear that may also be suspended. And in total, Ghana is likely, like you mentioned, to lose some $3.8 billion in World Bank financing over the next 5 to 6 years. Now, for 2024 alone, Ghana will lose some $600 million budget support and some $250 million for Financial Stability Fund. You remember this Financial Stability Fund was supposed to help the financial institutions that's had a hit as a result of the domestic debt exchange program.
That's right.
Yes, so they fear that this will impact negatively on some of these World Bank funded programs. Now, mind you, this was an analysis that was done upon a meeting convened by the Minister for Finance with the Chief Director, then the Director of the Ministry, and then the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, the First Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, and then the Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority. And this was to ascertain the impact on, one, the 2024 budget, and then these were the things that were summarized. They put them into thematic areas. Impact on the World Bank funded programs, which we just looked at. The other one had to do with the impact of the implementation on the 2024 budget, which has been read already. The impact on the IMF program itself. Then there's an impact on the debt restructuring programs, and then impact on African Development Bank programs.
Right.
Now, when you look at all these things, what the the Ministry of Finance is saying essentially is that when this particular bill is passed into law, all these listed programs will be affected in one way or the other. The effect, as has been stated, is going to be negative. So that is the reason they make some recommendations to the presidency, saying that there should be a structured engagement with local conservative forces, such as religious bodies and faith-based organizations, to communicate the economic implications of the passage of the anti-LGBT bill. This is because some of these bodies hold strong views that the bill has to be passed.
Right.
But the ministry is of the view that they have to be abreast with the economic implications, much as they would want this bill to be passed, not now. Because they make the case that Ghana is not in a position to lose all these monies that have been mentioned. It will cost budget shortfalls, and in some instances, it will cause hardship. So much as they want Africa to be able to fund its own programs, we are not at that stage yet. So the passage of the bill should at least be delayed a bit.
I see. Now, Dennis, stay with me a bit further, because one of the supporters, not sponsors, supporters of this group, that's the anti-LGBTQ plus bill, is a group of Christians, the Christian community as well. And one of the groups within the Christian community, also led by Adam Senano, is joining us on the telephone. Senano, can you hear me? Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Hot Edition.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us here. And I'm sure you've seen the statement from the Finance Ministry, but before I get your thoughts on these concerns that they have raised, the minority in Parliament also addressed the press not too long ago, and I want you to kindly take a listen to this, our viewers as well.
If the president is going to sacrifice what his people who elected him into office want in exchange for a threat, and I say a threat of not getting financial support from the IMF, we wait to see. I can guarantee you, if the president fails to do the needful, clearly, Ghanaians are going to hold him accountable. And the conclusion, as far as the good people of Ghana are concerned, is going to be simple. That Akufo-Addo, the NPP, his presidential candidate Baumia, are in favor of LGBTQI activities in the Republic of Ghana.
The head note of their letter said, passage of the proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values bill. Parliament of the Republic of Ghana did not pass proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family value bill. Parliament of Ghana passed a bill different from what they are saying. There is nothing said in their letter that directly relates to 92.7. They may not be able to get, they might not be able, that's what the letter says, they might not be able to get the money required under IMF. What is the reason? The reason is not there. It will affect their debt restructuring. What is the reason? The reason is not there. And they said it will not affect any agreement that the country is having with African Development Bank. There will not be any adverse effect. But as to why, under the IMF that we are now, whether we have categorically signed an agreement with IMF that the government will ensure that the bill is not passed into law is something that beats my imagination. And I'm inclined to say that I will least expect government of the Republic of Ghana under Nana Akufo-Addo to go and sign an agreement with IMF that a bill before Parliament, he will ensure that that particular bill is not passed into law.
Well, so these are minority MPs addressing the press on this position taken by the Finance Ministry on the anti-LGBTQ plus bill that was approved by Parliament just about a week ago. Now, the chairman of the Advocates for Christ Ghana, one of the groups supporting this anti-LGBTQ plus bill, Adam Senano, is with us. Now, seeing the details of this Finance Ministry caution to the president, as the chair of the Advocates for Christ, supporter of this anti-LGBTQ plus bill, how does that strike you?
Well, thank you. One of my many hats is I do some business. And I have been telling my friends from GRA that one of the challenges we face as a country is the lack of expansion of the tax net. As far back as 2018, I tried to engage with GRA and then understood that the tax policy unit of Ministry of Finance ought to have looked at how we look at domestic revenue mobilization much more constructively, because at the moment we are taxing about 30% of the productive labor, productive force of Ghana to cater for 100% of the needs. It's only those in the formal sector. A large part of those who are earning money in the informal sector are not taxed. And that's why we are getting overtaxed within the formal, private, and public sector. What am I saying? I'm saying that we talked about Ghana Beyond Aid some years ago. I think it is a point at which our Ministry of Finance, in advising the president, should take up that responsibility to formalize the informal sector. We have one of the lowest domestic revenue mobilization, percentages across the continent. There's work to be done. So let's not try and make ourselves over-dependent on the West. And so my first response is that they should get down to the real brass tacks of getting the revenue mobilization sorted out for this country, and show how we can raise the resources, because we can. Many Ghanaians doing businesses and not being taxed, and therefore we are struggling. Now, beyond that, I think it's important, as media reports this, to recognize that this is speculative. They are saying we may potentially lose A, we may potentially lose B. And as some of the parliamentarians pointed out, the nature of some of the contracts does not spell out LGBTQ as a basis or as a factor in the consideration for approval or release, etc. So that too must be taken on board. Overall, I think our country will actually get much more from a situation where we begin to look at how we self-rely rather than being dependent on these external sources. And at the same time, politicians should take responsibility when they mess up our economy and therefore must go begging, and at the same time expecting us to have to call the shots for everything that happens. Those are my thoughts on what has transpired in relation to the Ministry of Finance recommendation.
I see, but you started on the path of the fact that there are so many other areas we can raise revenue and not necessarily go cup in hand begging or borrowing, or as it were, relying on these Bretton Woods institutions. That's in the long or medium to long term. What the Finance Ministry's concern is that this is money that Ghana readily needs, and it is budgetary support for the budget period of 2024. Without it, it's going to be a challenge executing certain development projects. That's the practicality of the concerns that they have raised. And unfortunately for us, we can't raise that money. And so the people who are going to give us this money have tied a condition to it that if you assent to this bill, well, I'm not going to give you the money. So faced with this reality, and you being one of the supporters of this bill, how does the Finance Ministry navigate its way out of the situation like this and still have the president assent to this bill into law?
Alfred, you made two comments which are assumptions. First, you say that we cannot, in the short to medium term, raise additional resources. I fully disagree with you. There are too many places where, first of all, whether it's plugging the holes related to corruption. I can give you examples. We suddenly stopped collecting road tolls on roads which have gone bad and need to be fixed. There are so many examples, even in the corrections space, and you know we have the data on that. So when you say there are no short to medium term ways of getting in additional resources, I fully disagree with you. I don't know how.
But you see, we're talking about $3.8 billion. Adam Zan, you see, in as much as I just wanted to come.
How much we lose to corruption in a year is 3 billion.
Absolutely, we've been losing to corruption for many years now.
3 billion. That's short term. The losses to corruption alone in 1 year is $3 billion. So what are you talking about? That's short term. Medium term is when you go to year 2 to 4. What I'm saying is that if we're serious beyond plugging holes and making sure that we were formalizing the informal sector and making sure that other people should pay their taxes are paying, I never saw the Ghana Beyond Aid agenda as just a pipe dream. It is a reality. And that's what we should be headed for. Perhaps this is the time to begin to, draw up our, pull up our sleeves and get down to the work. I don't think that succumbing to the dictates of Western notions is the way to go. Remember, I found it curious that, Parliament passed this on the 28th of February. If you go into our history, 28th of February, it's those routes that triggered the independence drive. And if Kwame Nkrumah and his people were to kowtow to the Westerners who are saying, if you go for independence, we'll cut this, we'll not do that, you think we'll be here today? It's a time when we must take a decision. And I'm clear in my mind that it is not an option to say, because we risk losing some money. And mind you, Uganda has gone that path. Has Uganda collapsed? Nigeria has gone down that path. Has Nigeria collapsed? Kenya has gone down that path. Has Kenya collapsed? What have they done differently? There are lessons to be learned. So I don't buy the idea that because the Ministry of Finance suddenly says it is possible, and not that factually we are going to lose. And the second part of the assumptions you made was that because the contract says that if we do this, we'll lose that. That's the point I was making earlier, that it is not explicitly provided for in these bilateral, multilateral arrangements that this is a factor to be considered in the release of IMF or World Bank funding. And so that's also speculative.
Well, but indeed, essentially what you're saying is that with all these developments is a test of the commitment of government to, as it were, have this bill passed, regardless of whatever concerns that the Finance Ministry has raised. As it stands now.
That's exactly our position. I not just that, I think that the Ministry of Finance should up its game, tax policy unit. Let's get to formalizing the informal sector. Let's get to plugging the corruption holes, get the road tolls back, get all the other things that we have done that can create, the resources. Let's look at them. Sit down with stakeholders and we'll show you how to make sure that this country continues to move forward. But it may be a difficult period, but we will get through it.
But I know that sitting down with stakeholders is something that has been going on for only God knows how long. You've been sitting down with the managers of this economy for only God knows how long. So what is going to change? How different is this sitting going to be?
You sit with them. It's not that you sit and then they take your ideas and suggestions. We will not be where we are. I remember creating 2 platforms for engaging around the economy. In fact, in the last one we had said that if they didn't change certain things within a short period, they're going to the IMF in an ambulance. I remember Professor Buckman saying that. That was what, March, I think. And by May, what we had said and they had said won't happen, happened. So these stakeholder engagements are because other persons have expertise and understanding on what can be done. If government will listen and has the political will, we can turn the fortunes of this country around.
We'll see how things play out. Menzano, I appreciate your time as always. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Adam Senano is the co-chair of the Citizens Movements Against Corruption, but in this instance, he's the chairman of the Advocates for Christ Ghana. And they are supporting, they're one of the groups supporting the anti-LGBTQ plus bill that has been approved by Parliament, awaiting presidential accent, and reported to him a number of the concerns that the Finance Ministry has raised relating to how much money Ghana will lose, over $3.8 billion dollars. I beg your pardon, over $3.8 billion if the president accents to this bill to become law. Bear in mind that, Dennis, we are the IMF for $3 billion.
This is $3.8 billion.
This is $3.8 billion. I mean, so you see the financial argument that the finance ministry is making.
When you listen to people like Adam Senano, they seem to be resolute in their position.
Absolutely.
And these are exactly the kinds of groups that the Ministry of Finance says that the presidency should engage, because they appreciate their view. except that they see that they hold an entrenched view. So they are saying that, okay, the presidency should engage with those people just so they are able to reason with the government on the financial implications or the economic implications. When you look at the impact on the budget, what the finance ministry is saying is that if they don't get those monies coming from the foreign partners and the development partners, and they fall short, what it means is that you and I would pay to make up for that financing gap. In essence, there will be more taxes for us to pay so that they'll make up for that money. So they are simply saying that reason with them, let us see how we are going to get out of this. Not just the Christian bodies and advocates like Adam Senano's group, but also with countries they say are conservative countries. So they mentioned the Arab countries and then China, and that if they do so, it could trigger some resources to fill in the potential gaps. And then the very last recommendation that they make at the presidency level is to defer the assenting of the bill until the court rules on the legal issues tabled by the national key stakeholders. Mind you, some CSOs are in court already. In fact, that case has been pending for a while now. They actually wanted to injunct the process at the court, in Parliament, for Parliament not to be able to pass the bill. Now that Parliament has passed the bill, they are back to court to see how they can stop that process from proceeding. So the Minister of Finance is saying that let the court case proceed. Let's see how it goes, so that in that space of time, they can have some resources coming in. But we are yet to see what the presidency will say about all this.
That's it, 23 minutes after 5 here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7, also live on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and beyond, and on W93.5 in Wa and beyond. If you're just joining us, minority MPs are questioning the basis of the Finance Ministry's release on the anti-LGBTQ plus bill passed by Parliament last week. The Finance Ministry has asked the President not to assent to the bill, as it may cost the country over $3.8 billion in deals with the Bretton Woods institutions. I'm talking about the IMF and the World Bank. This bill has already seen development partners issuing warnings of possible setbacks to the Ghanaian economy, and Dennis has been running through the specific financial implications that the Finance Ministry has talked about. If we could just run through it again before you go, so that we clearly understand the breakdown of the $3.8 billion that the Finance Ministry says we stand the risk of losing if the president assents to this bill into law.
Yes,
what are we talking
so
about?
That 3.8 billion is just in respect of World Bank financing, like programs that are financed by the World Bank.
So there are others.
There are others.
So it's over 3.8 billion.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the 3.8 is just in respect of programs that are funded by the World Bank.
Okay.
And they are 6 in number. One, which is the expected 300 million financing from the first Ghana Resilient Recovery Development Policy Operation, which is a budget support, which is currently pending parliamentary approval. That might not be disbursed if the bill is passed into law or accepted into law. There's an ongoing negotiations on the second Ghana Resilient Recovery Development Policy Operation, which is also another budget support, amounting to some $300 million. That may be suspended if the bill is assented to become law. The third being the ongoing negotiations for some $250 million to support the Ghana Financial Stability Fund. That may also be suspended. There's also one on the disbursement of undisbursed amount totaling 2.1 billion for ongoing projects. That may also be suspended if the bill is made law. Then there's also preparation of pipeline projects and declaration of effectiveness for 2 projects totaling worth some $900 million. That may also be suspended. So in total, we are looking at this 3.8 billion in World Bank financing over the next 5 to 6 years. So it's not just within this administration, it may transcend this administration too, whoever takes over the reins of government in the next election year.
Let's hear from economist and also lecturer Dr. Patrick Esumi, is saying that it is premature for the Finance Ministry to ask the president not to assent to this bill. Says it is not within the Finance Ministry power to do so.
I think the government is there to serve the wishes of the people. And if, the government is not making decisions for itself. So I think
3FM
where I support
92.7
the statement is perhaps further engagement, especially between the executive, the legislature, and other bodies, for everybody to understand what the implications are. And for all of us to agree that this is a bill we really want passed and want assented to into law. And then we all know what the implications are and what actions we want to take going forward, assuming that the the financial implications that the finance ministry is talking about become a reality, then we find alternatives around it.
So that's Dr. Patrick assuming they're sharing his thoughts with us here on Hot Additional on 3FM 92.7. We're also live on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and beyond, and also on W93.5 in Wa and beyond. So keep your thoughts coming in. We're live on Facebook at 3FM 927. Share your thoughts with us and also share it with the rest of the world. So keep your thoughts coming in at 3FM 927 on Facebook and X. Read them out to you. Now, the former OT Regional Minister Joshua Makubo says he was surprised about his removal from office after the reshuffle by President Akufo-Addo. This, according to him, is because no concerns were raised about him during his tenure in office as a regional minister for redress. He therefore found it strange when the president told him he could no longer be part of his government as OT Regional Minister after the ministerial reshuffle on the 14th of February. Joshua Makubo it's indicated that some residents in the OT region have commended President Akufo-Addo for removing him. So that's what's happening in there. But to the opposition NDC, they've called out the Electoral Commission over what it says is the incomplete timetable released by the Electoral Commission. That's the election management body. Now, the Electoral Commission has issued a timetable for the 2024 general elections, detailing, among many things, a 20-day period to register first-time voters. But according to the largest party, the opposition party in this country, the release of the timetable without consultation does not augur well for the country's election process. Let's walk you through the timetable as made public by the Electoral Commission. So from April 1 to May 26th, there's going to be public education on voters registration exercise. From May 7 to May 27, the limited voter registration exercise will take place for that 20-day period. From July 9 to July 18, there's a submission of provisional voters register to political parties. July 15 to July 24, exhibition of voters register. August 30 to September 5, final voters register to be submitted to political parties. September 9 to September 13, Electoral Commission to receive nominations for presidential and parliamentary elections. September 23rd, balloting for presidential candidates. September 24th, balloting for parliamentary candidates. December 2, special voting for selected professionals. December 7, election day. Now, so this is the details of the Electoral Commission's timetable as published earlier today. Mustafa Bande is Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. Let's engage him further on this matter. Mustafa, I appreciate your time here on Hot Edition. First off, what are the specific concerns that you have with the details of this timetable that the Electoral Commission has published?
Okay, so good evening, and thank you for having me. First and foremost, there have been this call for timetable by the NDC for some time now, until somewhere last week when, out of frustration, the Director of Election for the NDC, Dr. Omani Boama, former Minister for Communication, wrote a letter to the Electoral Commission expressing worry and concern as to the task ahead of us, all the activities that EC is expected to be doing, and the fact that timetable wasn't out. The following day, quickly we saw a notice, a letter being sent to us to the effect that a meeting had been called on the 7th to discuss the issues of timetable and others. It is, however, surprising that beyond that letter, this morning we woke up and the Electoral Commission have gone to plant, a story of a sort of timeline in the daily graphics and expect us to be discussing that, timeline. We say that in the context of the Electoral Commission is a creation of law, and that things must be done properly within the limits of law. There is nothing called a timetable before political parties for us to discuss. What is being discussed is our speculation and our, documents do not, point any full responsibility to the Electoral Commission. Now, the importance of IPAC is to discuss this issue. So if you have called IPAC to discuss the matter, why go through the windows and through the document to the public? What is the Electoral Commission's intent? We would like to assure the Electoral Commission that it has absolutely nothing to worry about because the NDC is in position to support the Electoral Commission achieve its mandate in the interest of the people of Ghana. Nothing else, nothing more. And so putting the document to the back door is like tying political parties' hands behind their back so that we will come and debate the issues in public. What is the essence of IPAC? So we cannot comment. The essence of IPAC, where we will have an opportunity to air our grievances and our concerns, that comes on the 7th. Beyond that, the NDC will not discuss speculations. We will not even contribute to issues that are not properly before you. Because that document is not properly before you. We are discussing the publication. At West, the Electoral Commission comes to say we don't know anything about it. It's defamatory. But to the extent that we have relied on a document that is not properly before you, not signed by the Electoral Commission, not on the Electoral Commission's letterhead, not on its legal, what are we discussing?
Okay, so
the reason why these matters are addressable within IPAC is that the political parties are on the ground, and we understand the dynamics of the geopolitics of most of the rural areas. And so we'll be able to effectively contribute to the timetable that is feasible for the Electoral Commission. For example, if you say that we're doing registration in May, we all know that just after Easter, we go into serious winds, and perhaps rain would have started. If we don't guide the Electoral Commission, we'll be doing registration at the period when the Electoral Commission officers cannot travel on the lake, where there is water. People go into areas times when it is raining heavily. They cannot even travel to the remote area. Then it means that we are cutting some Ghanaians of the registration. It's important that these matters are properly constituted and put before IPAC so that stakeholders, political parties can effectively contribute. Then we can come up and discuss what transpired at IPAC to the public.
So the essential concern here is that political parties were not consulted before this timetable was published by the Electoral Commission. That's a concern that even though
the Electoral Commission is not required to consult before it puts out a timetable. What happens is that, and what is proper in the context of administration, is that the Electoral Commission will propose a timeline or a schedule, and that schedule is brought to IPAC for discussion.
Okay, but that has not been done. Even and now we are seeing the details of.
The Commission has done to plant documents in dailies and expect that to be discussed. It is taking the whole process upside down. What is this sloganeering and this populism?
Anyway, so Okay, Muzawa, hold on a bit for me. Let me bring in Richard Ahiagba, who is Director of Communications of the New Patriotic Party. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Hot Edition.
Thank you, Alfred.
Great. First off, this is the concern that the NDC has, to the extent that, yes, the Electoral Commission is not bound to consult the parties before putting out the timetable for the elections, but then the proposal has to be made at an IPAC meeting to get the buy-in, at least, of the political parties before it is published for the public. Is it one that you share, that now there's a timetable out, but IPAC never had the benefit of even having a conversation on it?
Well, thank you. Again, hello to my brother and your listeners. I think that he's answered the question, and I think I thank him for making it easy for all of us to have a conversation. That the EC is not required by any law anywhere to have approval of anybody, IPAC or otherwise, before they determine how they're going to execute their mandate. The only thing EC cannot do is to decide that they won't run an election. They will fix a date sometime in 2025 to run the election. They can't do that. They have to run according to what constitutionally has been agreed. Once they are doing that within that framework, they are the only people who determine what is fair, what is doable, what is practical to accomplish their mandate under the Constitution. So really, my brother and myself, our parties can make input even after this list has come out or proposed timeline has come out, we can look at our internal processes and look at what common sense will allow between now and the election to say that this is practical, this is not, and appeal. But it is never to be construed that the EC must seek our approval or say so before they can render what they think is practical for their purposes to execute their mandate. So for me, it's a non-issue. If there is any concern that I have for my party, I think through our rep, that IPAC would see if the EC will amend its position, align so that there's consensus. But absolutely, it is theirs and theirs alone to determine what the timelines are, subject to their internal resource availability and other constraints they have to be able to meet their mandate. So for me, it's not an issue to quibble about. It is one for us political parties to look internally and see what our calendars are and align, and then ensure that stakeholders we do what we have to do to ensure that the election goes smoothly.
But to the extent that I recall the last time we had the conversation, you had some level of agreement that there's some mistrust, as has been the case in previous election years for the Electoral Commission. So some of these things that, even though they are not bound by law to do, that would help in consensus building and addressing that conception, or we would say the suspicion of mistrust for the Electoral Commission. They should also be seen doing, even though they are not bound to do so that it would avoid all of these concerns that could have actually been addressed if, for instance, IPAC had the benefit of having a conversation on this as political parties before this publication, isn't it?
No, Alfred, I mean, really, what is it? They just say on this date we'll do public education from now till that date for 56 days. We want to conscientize the public on this program. After that, we want to do registration. Really, what's the confusion about that? What is the mistrust? That's why I was careful to say that it is theirs alone to propose a calendar when they are going to do something. Alfred, your producer called me and said that this time I should be available for an interview, right? The time he gave me is not exactly when you have called me, the few minutes after the time I was told, but then the interview is happening because it is you who must be ready, who must set the platform for us to come. So we cannot say that by all means work with our time. If we are supposed to play on this platform, then you are the referee, you make the rules, we come to play. So if there are any delays, that to whatever you have made is subject to the constraints you have. You couldn't have done anything about it. So I think that the NDC, well, they're just doing this to fuel the atmosphere that, there's something amiss. But there's nothing. Everything that the EC has to do, they brought a timetable. I've spoken to some people at the EC. They're saying that, this is not their release essentially, but it probably will not be far from the truth. And then perhaps they would have a meeting with the parties as far as they are concerned. At that meeting, they would speak to the matters. And so any proposals that they have made, the political parties will make an input. But I'm saying that these are not consequential matters to say that, because of this day we have a problem. Only thing is maybe you can say that let's increase the number of registration days. If it's feasible, it will be done. If not, they will explain why it cannot be done. And I don't think that there is anything being done to disadvantage anybody. It's actually good for us political parties to know this ahead of time, to plan. All it is that dates. Plan your activities to fit this calendar. There cannot be anything possibly wrong with that. The NDC can tell us.
But so you're saying
let's go to IPAC and understand the constraints that allow them to program this way, and then let's work with it.
You're saying that you contacted some people at the EC and they say that this release is not coming from them officially?
But it's not an official release.
Yes.
It's not an official release.
Right.
So,
okay.
It's not an official release. But then my understanding is that their plot is to meet with IPAC, and following that conversation, they would issue a formal notice. But of course, whoever got this from EC sources may not necessarily be too far from where the anchor would be. That's my learning. And I think that whichever way, whether they release it after IPAC or they release it before IPAC, I don't see anything wrong with putting a calendar out and say that we, the EC, want to operate by this. You political parties, the ones we interface, align your activities. I think that is fair game.
Well, we'll see how the coming days will look like, because we know there's an IPAC meeting on Thursday, so we'll monitor that. Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Alfred.
Mustafa, I'll give you the final word on this matter. Taking into consideration what the NPP, at least Richard Hiagba's position for the NPP is on the concerns you have raised.
Well, I think that my brother does not understand the processes of election and how the Electoral Commission works. A document that is supposed to be discussed at IPAC as an agenda, why do you go and plant that in the newspapers and then ask us to be discussing it in public? Then you are hiding behind and listening to opinions when you know that on the 7th we are coming before you. What is the Electoral Commission trying to achieve that? Then suddenly MPP become the public relations department for the Electoral Commission. I am very confused. Mr. Ahiagba is commenting on a document that is not properly before it. Is it a case that by some privilege they have received the timetable of the Electoral Commission way ahead of time? Is it a case that they knew about it that we don't know? We cannot wake up and just see a document in the daily, a document that is supposed to be discussed. And he said that we cannot, if he is not bound by political parties, but yet he's proposing amendments and said that we can propose that some dates be changed. Yes, that is subject to the Electoral Commission. But political parties must be given a forum to discuss that. And we have always maintained that IPAC is a forum for political parties to make input to help the Electoral Commission achieve its mandate within considerations of that contribution that comes from political parties. And we cannot write these things under the carpet. That suffices. We are waiting on to have ourselves present at the IPAC meeting where we make our input. And then when we are done, the NDC will share its position on some of the issues that will be raised at that forum for the public to know how feasible they are, how important they are, and how that will help us achieve our objectives in terms of political parties and the Electoral Commission or otherwise.
Okay. Mustafa, I appreciate your time as always, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mustafa Agbande is the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. Also, thank you to Richard Ahiagba, who's the Director of Communications of the New Patriotic Party. But we have done what we can do to deal with illegal mining, and the courts are also doing their part. That's the summary of the words of the Information Minister Designate, Fatima Abubakar. The minister says that as far as this government and the promise the president made to the Ghanaian people are concerned, what ought to be done to deal with the menace has been done. Now, the comment comes as many question why the president seems to have failed to mention the issue of illegal mining in his recent State of the Nation address. In an interview with 3FM News, Fatima Abubakar added that the indigents have also been helped.
Instead of leaving the small-scale sector into the hands of Chinese and other foreign nationals, they are putting communities together, giving them mercury-free mining devices like the gold catcher, giving them the technical training and building capacity so that when they do surface mining on small scale, they are able to do reclamation, they are able to replant the trees, they are able to make sure the spaces that they have mined remain viable and sustainable.
But again, on a large scale, what would you say has been the impact of the government on this illegal mining issue you're talking about?
The community mining has been impactful. Over 20 communities. We are talking about different things. I'm coming to that. When it comes to the water turbidity, there are a lot of factors. Most especially unless they do the testing to tell us what is in the water at a particular point in time, just what we see on the surface will not be sufficient to point to the level of turbidity.
So you wouldn't say that the quality of our water bodies is as a result of illegal mining alone? That's what you're saying?
It's a contributing factor, but it is not the only factor. For instance,
when we started illegal mining, we had issues. I mean, we didn't have our water bodies like that.
Over a long period, I'm saying over a long period. In fact, if you follow the prosecution by the Attorney General's office, especially with foreign nationals like the Chinese, Aisha Huan and so on and so forth, those are not cases or infringements or abuses that occurred 2017 or post-2017. These are cases that precede President Akufo-Addo's administration.
That's Bitu Sedu there. Fatima Waka, Information Minister Designate, just live here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7, also live on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and beyond, and on W93.5 in One Beyond. The Transport Operators Union and the Concerned Drivers Association of Ghana have jointly announced a 30% hike in transport fares effective Thursday, March 7. In a press release issued earlier today, the two organizations attributed the fare increase to the government's failure to address their concerns adequately. So this is a matter that we're looking at quite closely as well here on Hot Edition. We're back shortly after this quick break with business with Michael Obodu. Stay with us.
The 3FM Gobe Festival 2024. Gobe Lovers and Gobe Eaters Association. Time now so. Get ready for the biggest Gobe event in Ghana. On Saturday, 16th March at the Accra Mall Interchange Park. From 9 a.m., come experience a food festival interlaced with fun activities and music performances like never before. Be there to savor different flavors and combos of Gobe, like Gobe and rice, or Gobe and kenke. Throw some pepper on the side, avocado in the center circle, and eggs on the top corner. Although last year was terrific, this year will be a showdown. Don't miss out on the gastronomic delights and vibrant atmosphere. Are you a Gobe seller or you know anyone? Call now to register 0532-200-927 or 0531-100-927. Let's link up. The 3FM Gobe Festival 2024. Your Gobe joint the B. Join us on Saturday, 16th March at 9 a.m. and let's transform the Accra Mall Interchange Park into a Gobe lovers paradise. 3FM 92.7, your urban lifestyle radio station.
Sponsored by Glovo App, Bigo Drinks, Inkulenu Foods, Fidelity Bank, Gino Tomato Paste, Dewa Chop Money, Flora Tissues, Sankofa Natural Spices.
I know the show is TV, you know you're ready, you show come good, I'm at the end of that.
Hello there, it's time now for the business segment here on Hot Edition. Coming up tonight, energy strategists doubt tariff reduction by the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PRC, could exacerbate power sector debts. I am Michael Obodu. I'll bring you details of our top stories and more shortly. Please stay with us. Well, thank you for staying with us. Let's go straight now into our top story. As energy strategist, Dr. Yusuf Sulemana has cast doubts over the impact of the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PURC's marginal reduction in electricity tariffs for residential consumers. The Chamber of Independent Power Generators have issued a statement arguing that the move is likely to exacerbate debt of about $1.8 billion to the independent power producers by end of 2024. But Dr. Yusuf Sulemana believes otherwise.
Pouring water into a leaky basket. Some may argue that we are not paying cost-reflective tariffs. How do you pay cost-reflective tariffs when you have so much leakages within the system, when you have so much inefficiencies within the system? So I see the key thing, IBB, they are talking from the business point of view, and they are right to call for that direction, that they shouldn't be the percentage decrease is just a little above 6%. That is even for you can say averagely 5%, because 6%, 6.5% for residential, and then almost 5% for non-residential. And also the consumption brackets. It's not a flat one. It is those who consume beyond 300 kilowatt hour. And so most of the lifeline people are left out in this particular. It means that you have to consume beyond 300 kilowatt hour to be able to enjoy this kind of reduction. And so it means that if you consume below that, you're not going to, your rates remain the same. So that's why I'm thinking that is, if you were to look at the quantum in terms of revenue that ECG would lose in that particular category. I don't think it's that massive that will impact the flow to IPP.
Dr. Sulemana is also calling on players within the energy distribution network to deal with inefficiencies within the sector to maximize revenue mobilization.
You can't keep pouring water into a leaky basket. Some may argue that we are not paying cost-reflective tariffs. How do you pay cost-reflective tariffs when you have so much leakages within the system, when you have so much inefficiencies within the system? So I see the key thing, IPP, they are talking from the business point of view, and they are right to call for that direction, that there shouldn't be any reduction whatsoever, because that will impact them. But I personally think that this reduction in particular wouldn't have that much of impact. What will have much of impact is where we have the inefficiencies within the structures, where we have to plug, the leakages we have to plug. If we do that, I think we'll be in a better place.
So that was energy strategist Dr. Yusuf Sulemana speaking there. Away from that, the executive director of the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, Dr. Charles Nyaba, says his outfit will be keenly monitoring the manifestos of political parties on the lookout for policies on irrigation. Dr. Nyaba says that irrigation farming could help promote food security, create employment, especially in the 3 northern regions, and reduce food imports. His call comes on the back of concerns of non-functioning of most dams constructed under the 1D, 1F project.
Go to Upper East, Northern, Savannah, and Northeast and Upper West region. After November, you realize that there is no any active economic activity for the youth to do, because the rains were stopped. So majority of them then traveled to southern Ghana to look for non-existent white-collar jobs. As we go into 2024 elections again, we want both NDC and NPP to prioritize community dams as one of their manifesto promise. When you go to countries like China, India, even USA, today, their agriculture sector cannot thrive without irrigation.
So you hear that the voice of Dr. Charles Nyaba. He is the executive director of the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, bringing an end to the business segment here on Hot Edition. For more business stories, please check out our website. It's 3news.com/business. I am Michael Opedu. Thank you for listening. As always, please stay safe. Up next is sports, and Billy is on standby.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the sports segment here on the 3FM Hot Edition. My name is Billy Shen. Let's start off from the 2023 African Games, because it started today and the table tennis match commenced earlier this morning at the Accra International Conference Center. And also, badminton was scheduled to commence this morning, but it has been postponed to the 7th of March due to facility concerns. But meanwhile, there was a press briefing done by the Minister of Youth and Sports, that's Mustafa Yusuf, who spoke about the breakdown of the funding on the African Games in relation to the facilities that were made, the Botiman Sports Complex, the University of Ghana Sports Stadium, and the Games Village. Let's listen to exactly what he had to say about the breakdown.
The breakdown of the funding is as follows. The Botiman construction site, the Botiman Sporting Complex, the contract sum that Parliament and Cabinet approved, which the contractors have done and they have been paid, is 145 million. The CONSA, the University of Ghana site, 34 million, and also the Games Village, also 16. Competition and training venues. The facilities earmarked for competition and training during the Games have all been identified and are ready for hosting the respective discipline.
The Minister of Youth and Sports also added a breakdown of the operational cost of the local organizing committee, which is one of the organizers of the multi-sport competition.
A total amount of 47,712,853 United States dollars is estimated to cover the operational cost of the LOC. And like I said, this estimated amount is earmarked to be used by the local organizing committee for general organization of the competition, which started after the LOC was formed in 2020.
That was the sports minister, Mustafa Yusuf. Now let's head over to Europe, where Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta is in high spirits ahead of the clash with Sheffield United on Monday night and believes Thomas Partey, who's recently returned to the side, will be crucial upon his return and as the Gunners look to keep their Premier League title challenge alive.
For sure, and I would have to see, that chemistry on the pitch and those qualities and the things that we have to tweak around them to make sure that they play in their strength and they make each other better. But I think that will be a very powerful midfield.
To work the way it has been.
Yeah, everybody has to be connected because every space, the timing of it as well, the approach, the distances that you have between players to reach certain intentions of the opponent and structures. It's a lot of things, but they know it now. I think it flows. They do it in a natural way, and it is efficient, and we have to continue to do that.
That was Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta, and that brings an end to the sports segment here on the 3FM Hot Edition. My name is Billy Shen, and Alfred is on standby with more.
Thank you, Bill. Let's get into a bit more detail on the issues earlier today. And we understand that the Minister of Education has been justifying why some monies were spent, in fact, on the printing of some past questions. That's for the WASI students. Some 68.5 million Ghana cedis was spent on a sole source contract for photocopy of past questions. Komla Kluche is a parliamentary correspondent. He's been giving us some details on this. Komla, thank you so much for joining us here on Hot Edition. What more do we know about this justification from the Education Minister on this 68.5 million cedis spent on this photocopy of past questions?
Well, the Minister in his response to Parliament said the Ministry employed a single source method in procuring the 568,755 past question papers for the senior high school students who wrote the WASI in 2020. Now, it said the method employed was informed by the recommendations from the Ghana Education Service and the West African Exams Council, and that Messrs. Akula Publications Limited and Kingdom Book Stationery were recommended by the GES and WIEC for this.
I see. And what's been the reaction so far to this justification or explanation as happened earlier today?
Much expected. The minority is incensed about this. They see this as unjustified and a rip-off. And the fact that, how did it even have to go through a single source? Issues of the procurement, a breach of the procurement law and others have been raised by the minorities. And this is a figure, we must say that this is a figure that's combined of 2020 and 2021. That's what sums up to the 68.5 million. And so a breakdown is 33 million for one, that's the 2020, and then the other for the 2021 academic year. And this is what the minister has been saying, that it's very much needed. The minority, as incensed as they are about this, say that this is unacceptable, and they are actually urging the office of the OSP or the office of the special prosecutor to go into this matter and find out the veracity of this. Why the government will have to use a single sole source method in the procurement of
a photocopying of past questions.
Right. Kamla, appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much for this. Kamla Kruche is our chief parliamentary correspondent there. That's end for us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Join us same time tomorrow for some more. The drive continues. I am Alfred Ocansey. Join me at 10 p.m. on TV3 for Ghana Tonight. Do have a great evening.